I'm glad you brought that up because that's the direction I wanted to go in next. They're exploiting this to push for the vaccines. They're trying to get everyone to believe they need to be forcibly inoculated to help fight this quote pandemic. And here's the problem when you have situations like this is the anti-vaxxers, quote unquote, end up getting branded as the bad guys by the fake corporate media. They're branded as the monsters who are helping to promulgate this disease because they just won't take the vaccines. Well, what I've never understood about the arguments against the anti-vax crowd is they'll say things like, well, if you don't vaccinate your children, you're putting my vaccinated child at risk. Well, if the vaccine worked, then your vaccinated child should have been protected from my unvaccinated child. How does that make any sense?
It doesn't. It doesn't. And actually, if you analytically look at this, none of that stuff makes sense. Bill Gates has a big role in all of this. And one of the things that tells me that this coronavirus outbreak was not just an accident from a bat or from a spill at a laboratory is that he ran this coronavirus simulation. And I'm going to quote from Health Impact News, comments by the editor, Brian Shilevy, who is quoting Spiro Skouras. And here's what he writes. He says, in this report, this quote from Skouras, in this report, we take an inside look at Event 201, which took place in New York City on October the 18th, 2019. Event 201 is a high-level pandemic exercise hosted by the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security in partnership with the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. This is extremely fascinating because this pandemic simulation exercise of coronavirus took place about 6 weeks before the first illness from the coronavirus was actually reported in Wuhan, China. This is one hell of a coincidence if you believe in that sort of thing. Another fascinating connection is the fact that not only did Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation participate in and help set up the pandemic simulation of a coronavirus outbreak, but they just so happened to fund the group who owns the patent to the deadly coronavirus and are already working on a vaccine to solve the current crisis. Again, an incredible coincidence. And by the way, in this Health Impact News article, they have video from this Bill Gates simulation exercise, and they have health experts there who are talking about the need to censor fake news, meaning websites like ours, right? And they're talking about how in order to stop this pandemic from spreading, they need to stop fake news. So governments should apply pressure to the tech giants, and you're talking about Google and Facebook, to take down anybody spreading fake news in order to save the population. They even talked about arresting people who are spreading fake news. We know that the fake news is actually coming from the other side. Again, it's just a matter of logical thinking. But I wanted to quote John Rappaport on a vaccine that's being developed right now, but I wanted your thoughts first on this simulation.
Well, I think it proves, just like you've been talking about, there is no such thing, in my opinion, when we're analyzing events like this. There's no such thing as a coincidence, okay? Like, I'm supposed to believe Bill Gates had been putting, probably billions of dollars into vaccines, and now all of a sudden they're running simulations of a pandemic scenario very similar to the one we're seeing play out right now. I don't buy it. The medical industry is full of dishonest people. Big Pharma is a medical industrial complex. They want you to be sick, they want you to be decrepit, and they want you to be dependent on vaccines, on their pills, on their medication. And they exploit situations like this to force people into injecting themselves with poison. And you brought up the social media aspect and how big conglomerates, Google and Facebook and Twitter, are censoring people. They're not just censoring people who are conservative. They're not just censoring people who are right of center, but there's also a campaign to censor those who would question the medical industrial complex and big pharma and the vaccinations and all the rest of it. And the reason why is because deep down they know they can't win the debate about vaccines. They can't win the debate about how people question the coronavirus, the origins of the coronavirus, and people who would be branded as conspiracy theorists, they can't beat them within the arena of a structured discussion. And so the only option they have is to take away your voice, Mr. Perloff.